My name is Illa, and in my family, that name was always followed by a joke. Not the harmless kind, the kind that slowly teaches you where you belong, at least where they think you belong. The night everything changed, I walked into my brother's mansion for his wife's birthday dinner. Crystal chandeliers glowed above marble floors. Guests laughed over champagne while servers floated through the room like shadows. It looked less like a home and more like a kingdom built to impress people who already had too much. I almost didn't go. The invitation had arrived late that afternoon through a careless text. Dinner at 7. Don't be late. No warmth, no excitement, just obligation. Still, part of me hoped maybe this time would be different. Maybe success had softened them. Maybe time had repaired something I couldn't. I was wrong. The moment I stepped inside, I felt it. The glances, the whispers, the silence that followed me like smoke. I sat quietly near the end of the table, trying to disappear into the glow of candlelight and polished silverware. But disappearing was never allowed in my family. Not for me. Halfway through dinner, my sister-in-law lifted her wine glass and looked directly at me. "The help eats in the kitchen," she said with a smile. Laughter exploded around the table, and then came the voice that hurt most. My father leaned back in his chair, amused. "She's right," he said casually. "You've always been a disappointment. Don't think money suddenly makes you family." Something inside me went still. Not broken, still. Because in that moment, after years of fighting for scraps of approval, I finally understood the truth. No achievement would ever be enough for people committed to misunderstanding me. I could have argued. I could have cried. Instead, I smiled. Then I picked up my phone. I scrolled to one contact and pressed call. The room quieted as I spoke. "Cancel the $30 million contract." At first, nobody reacted. Then my brother's face lost all color. His company depended on that deal. Investors were already lined up. Loans had already been taken. Promises had already been made. And every one of them depended on me. My father's expression hardened. My sister-in-law stopped smiling. I ended the call gently and placed my phone beside my plate. For the first time in my life, every eye at that table saw me clearly, not as the forgotten daughter, not as the quiet sister, but as the person holding the power they thought belonged only to them. "You can't be serious," my brother whispered. But I was. Years earlier, when nobody believed in me, I built my own company from nothing. While they mocked my long hours and dismissed my ambition, I worked quietly. I failed privately. I learned alone. And eventually, I succeeded. Not because they supported me, because they didn't. The contract I canceled that night was supposed to save my brother's collapsing business. He had spent months assuming I would help because that's what I always did. I fixed things. I stayed quiet. I carried people who never carried me. Until I stopped. "You've ruined me," he shouted finally, slamming his glass onto the table. Red wine spilled across the white cloth like a stain nobody could ignore. I looked at him calmly. "No," I said softly. "I just stopped saving you." The room erupted. My father stood, furious. My sister-in-law tried to recover her confidence, but panic had already cracked through her voice. "You think destroying your own family makes you powerful?" she snapped. I met her gaze steadily. "Family," I repeated. Interesting word coming from people who spent years treating me like a servant. Nobody laughed this time. Because the truth had entered the room, and truth makes cruel people uncomfortable. My brother's desperation grew louder with every passing second. "That contract meant everything," he said. I believed him. That was the problem. He had built an empire using my loyalty while convincing himself I deserved none in return. For years, they called me selfish for pursuing success. Then they expected access to everything I built. My father tried one last time to regain control. "You'll regret this," he warned. But his voice no longer sounded powerful. It sounded afraid. I stood slowly and slipped on my coat. "You had years to make me feel like family," I told them quietly. "You chose pride instead." Then I walked out. No one followed me. Outside, the night air felt lighter than anything inside that mansion ever had. The next morning, my phone exploded with calls. My father, my brother, unknown numbers, lawyers, business partners. I ignored all of them. For years, I chased their approval like it was oxygen. Now I finally understood something freeing. People who only value you when you're useful never truly valued you at all. By noon, the headlines started appearing online. Major corporate deal collapses. Family-owned company faces financial crisis. Investors pull support. I sat in my apartment drinking coffee while their carefully built image began cracking in public. And strangely, I felt no joy, only peace. Because revenge had never really been my goal. Freedom was. Days later, they came to my apartment, all three of them. My father looked older somehow. My brother looked exhausted. His wife no longer wore arrogance like jewelry. "We can fix this," my father said the moment I opened the door. No apology, no accountability, just fear. "You're still family," he added carefully. That word again. Family. The title they only offered when they needed something. I leaned against the doorway calmly. "Family doesn't humiliate you for existing," I said. My brother stepped forward desperately. "Please, if you reverse the cancellation, we can still recover." I studied him quietly. For years, I had mistaken guilt for love, obligation for connection. Not anymore. "You never wanted me at your table," I said. "You just wanted access to what I could provide." My sister-in-law crossed her arms. "So, you're really willing to destroy us?" I almost laughed. "No," I answered softly. "You did that yourselves." The silence that followed felt heavy enough to collapse walls. For once, they had nothing left to say. No jokes, no insults, no superiority. Only consequences. And consequences sound a lot like silence when people finally run out of excuses. I closed the door gently, not out of anger, out of closure. The weeks that followed changed everything. Their companies spiraled publicly. Investors fled. Lawsuits surfaced. Reporters gathered outside the mansion that once symbolized power. Meanwhile, my own life expanded in ways I never expected. New companies reached out. New partnerships formed. People respected the decision I made because they understood something my family never did. Integrity matters more than appearances. One evening, I drove past the mansion. The lights were mostly off. The fountain in front had stopped running. And through one window, I saw my father sitting alone in the dark. For a brief moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Then I remembered every time he made me feel small to protect his own ego, and the feeling disappeared. Not because I hated him, because I had finally stopped needing him. That was the real victory, not the canceled contract, not the public collapse, not the headlines. The victory was becoming someone who no longer measured her worth through people incapable of giving love freely. Months later, I moved into a new office overlooking the city skyline. Floor-to-ceiling windows, quiet mornings, peace, real peace. One night, while standing there alone, I thought about the girl who used to sit silently at family dinners pretending insults didn't hurt. The girl who kept trying harder. The girl who believed acceptance could be earned. She was gone now. In her place stood someone stronger, someone calmer, someone free. I realized then that justice rarely arrives loudly. Sometimes it arrives quietly, in boundaries, in distance. in finally choosing yourself after years of begging others to choose you first. My brother lost his empire. My father lost control. My sister-in-law lost the audience she used to perform for. But me? I lost the need to prove my worth to people determined not to see it, and that loss changed my life forever. So when people ask how the story ended, I tell them the truth. It didn't end with revenge, it ended with freedom, and freedom tastes far sweeter than approval ever did.